All right, well, I'm going to open us up in a prayer. Let's pray. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Dear God, I thank you for this gathering of people. I thank you for the opportunity to come tell some good stories and spread good news. Praise you for your amazing gifts and blessings that you give us all, and I ask for your protection over everyone here and their families and loved ones. Amen. Amen. So, thank you very much for having me. I love that you do this. I might steal this idea from my parish back home. What a great idea. When Father David asked me if I would come talk, I said yes, and I knew exactly right away what I wanted to talk about, because I am really lucky in my work that I see good things happening every day. And I've noticed when I get together with some of our friends, we've raised all our kids together, and, now we get together, and often they're saying, so what happened at work? Because it's such a nice contrast to turning on the news and being barraged by all the bad news. And I almost always see something good every day I go to work. So I'm like, I want to come talk about some of the good things I see. So who am I and why am I here? Okay, I'm Monica. I work for the Priests of the Sacred Heart, also called Dehonians after their founder, Father Leo John Dehon. They're also called SCJs after the Latin initials of the order's name. Confusing, all right? I'm a marketing person. This is confusing to people to have three names. I work in this building, and as I went outside to take the picture, Father Vienne, our U.S. Provincial Superior, happened to arrive for work, and I said, hey, pose for me. So this is up in Hales Corners, Wisconsin. It's just south of Milwaukee. Across from our parking lot is a huge seminary and school of theology that the Priests of the Sacred Heart run. And across the road from us is a huge senior living facility. So this photo, I want to talk a little bit about the Priests of the Sacred Heart, just to get some language settled. So as I said, they can be called Dehonians or SCJs. Do people really know the difference between a religious order and a diocese? So a diocese, right, is kind of a geographic area, and you have your local bishop. I think that's Bishop Kopacz here. And a religious order is not so much confined by geography, but it usually has a founder. And that founder has a charism. And that's a fancy word for a gift to share with the church. And then that kind of infuses their spirituality and the type of work they do. So the Priests of the Sacred Heart are a very international order. These are just some representatives from around the world. They serve in over 40 countries, and they had a meeting with Pope Francis before he passed away. Another term I should probably go back to before we go forward. So what are Dehonian Associates, and what does it mean to be director of Dehonian Associates? Dehonian Associates are people who have learned a little bit about the Priests of the Sacred Heart. Maybe they go to a parish that they work in, or they volunteer at one of the ministries, or they actually work for them. And they gather to usually once a month to learn a little bit more about the spirituality. So it kind of acts as like a small faith-sharing group. It develops these really wonderful kind of small support groups for people who are trying to learn more about their faith and to live out their faith a little bit more in the world. I only started this job a year ago, and I came to Mississippi right away. Father Jack invited me because you all are the only one of our U.S. apostolates that have active Dehonian associate groups. So I came down here to learn, what are you doing and what are you doing well? You have 3 groups down here, which is fabulous. 4. See, I'm still learning. Since then, one of the SCJs in formation started a group down in Texas that's going very well. I started an online group last year, which ended up with 4 people. We now have another group in Wisconsin starting this year. We have another online group with people from Seattle to New York. And some of those people we know will be starting groups in their own area. And so we're seeing a lot of growth in this. I think this is kind of exciting. To me, when I ask people why, a lot of people have kind of this uneasiness or unhappiness with how the world is right now. They don't know what to do about it, or they want to explore their faith better and figure out some way to live more into that faith. And this is just one of many things that they can do. So Dehonian Associate groups, we've got a flyer right there, and I'll forget if I wait to the end. Father Jack is actually going to have 3 introductory sessions. So if anyone's interested in learning more, there's a flyer there. It's the end of October. There's no commitment needed. In fact, I kind of changed the names, don't tell Father Jack, to Dehonian Associates and Friends, because you don't have to make a formal commitment. But if you do, really you're just committing to incorporate a little bit more Dehonian spirituality in your life. So that's Dehonian Associates. All right. The mission of my office is actually much broader. I'm supposed to promote Dehonian spirituality to anyone who's not in the order. That's kind of broad. So to anyone in the U.S. So my office ends up doing a lot of things like preparing materials. I brought a bunch of free things that you are welcome to take home if you want to learn more about the priests of the Sacred Heart. Giving talks. We're actually developing leadership retreats and courses based on the writings of the founder, Father Leo Dehon. So we do all sorts of things. So tonight I'm going to try to keep to my time limit, but I want to tell you a little bit about the founder of the order because it's so important to understand the founder, and then a little bit about the order, and then we're going to sprinkle in a few kind of good news stories along the way. My hope is you go to sleep happier tonight. So this is the founder, Venerable Father Leo John Dehon. I'm going to go a little bit quick through his life. He was born in La Capelle, France in 1843. This is northern France. I think this is a very picturesque little picture of where the church he was baptized in. A lot of people go, what does this priest back in the 1840s in France have any relevance to life today? And actually, none of you would be in this room tonight if he hadn't existed. But there are a whole lot of other reasons he's still very relevant. This was his family home. He was born into a life of privilege. It was a working farm, so he wasn't an aristocrat, but the family was pretty well off, which meant he could be very well educated. They specialized in raising racehorses. They were a family of influence, so his father and his grandfather were both mayors of the town. This is his mother, Adele. And I love this line. One biographer says, it was by his mother's knee that he learned of the Jesus who is gentle and humble of heart. I love that. She used to go all through the village to visit the sick and the poor and do all sorts of pastoral good works. And he would continue that work through his whole life. He was active with St. Vincent de Paul societies. Now, by contrast, I say it was by his father's side that he learned about the much broader world that was out there. So at age 12, his father takes him to the Paris exhibition. Can you imagine being a 12-year-old boy from a village and traveling and seeing this? So being exposed to inventions and people from all around the world. And his whole life would be marked by travel. He actually viewed it as a great way to learn about the world that he lived in. So we're going to go fast. He goes off to boarding high school, which was more common at that time, with his brother. And his second Christmas there, he believes he has a vocation to the priesthood. And that's his high school photo. He goes home, and his parents are not in favor of this idea. He was very close to his mother. His mother was concerned that they wouldn't be able to be that close anymore. And the father wanted a secular life of great influence for his son. So they said, no, you can't go to seminary. You're going to go to Paris and study, which he does, and he earns a doctorate in civil law. I love the picture, like leaning on the top hat. Okay, well, then he finishes that and he comes home. He still would like to be a priest. They still aren't in favor of it. One biographer suggests that as a little distraction, maybe the parents suggested he go around the world with a friend on a trip. And he does. Of course, at the end of that trip, he ends up in Rome, where he ends up talking to the Pope, because it seems like throughout his life, he's always talking to popes. The Pope confirms his vocation. So he goes home. He is now of age to say, I want to be a priest. And amidst tears and arguing, he goes off to seminary. He goes to St. Clare Seminary in Rome. And in his writing, he often calls these some of his happiest years. He really loves it and thrives. He actually goes on to earn 3 more doctorates while in seminary. Canon law, philosophy, and theology. So he's got 4 doctorates by the time he gets out. He is ordained while he's in seminary and reconciles with his parents. His mother is overjoyed with emotion at the event, and his father, who is not a practicing Catholic, actually comes back to the faith. Now, while he is in seminary, Vatican I happens, and he's asked to be a stenographer. So again, he's in this incredible opportunity of meeting people from around the world who are talking about the church in the world, what the problems are, what the solutions are. And throughout his life, he has great vision, and he's able to think very broadly. And I think a lot of these opportunities contributed to that. So this is a picture of him as a young priest. You can look at that and say, oh, look at that. 4 doctorates, great connections. Everyone assumed that he would be given a position in a lofty academic institution. Either that or he was considering joining a religious order, but he just wasn't quite positive. So he leaves himself open to where his bishop wants to send him. And he sends him to the industrial town of Saint-Quentin, France. And it's hard to see this photo, but basically you get the idea. It's really crowded, okay? This is post-Revolutionary War France. There's a lot of tensions. Like, we have a lot of tensions now. There were a lot of tensions back then. The Catholics were more aligned with the monarchists. That wasn't so good after the Revolution. You have also the Industrial Revolution going on. So people are moving from their family villages to the city looking for work. There's not enough housing. And then people are setting up factories. Well, you know, the factory owners are doing this for the first time. Everyone is learning, but it is a mess. The people are working long hours, hazardous conditions. The living conditions are really pretty squalid and awful. This picture to the bottom is one of some women and children in a factory where often they worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now this, again, kind of picturesque little picture of the church where he was stationed. He was the 7th canon, I believe, in this parish, quite beautiful. It would have been very usual at this time to stay inside and take care of your liturgical duties. The streets were not necessarily friendly places, and they were very messy. But he notices that the people aren't inside the church. And so he does something very unusual, which is he goes out to the streets. He becomes famous. You will hear SCJs talk about Father Dehon saying, go to the people. And that's what he did. He went out to the streets to learn about, why aren't you at church? And then he kind of learns about their quality of life, and he realizes, I can't invite them into church to encounter the love of God when they're starving and things are so bad out here. So, I love this. Within 2 weeks, only 2 weeks, as a brand new young priest, he decides that they need a youth club because the youth are running around the streets because the parents are working. They need a union, like a workers' association was kind of common back then, and a bank to keep their money. Eventually, he would start a magazine, and eventually he would start a high school. This is a picture of what is called his beloved St. John's High School. And he kind of did this in union with the local bishop who really wanted a school. These are called social apostolic ministries because he's going out, apostolic, you're going out to the people. This was really unusual back then. Like, this was not a common thing. This was really new. Okay, skip forward a few years. He's exhausted. He's finding he doesn't have enough time for his own prayer life. He's longing for a religious community. He's also longing for other priests and religious brothers who would consider doing this type of work with him. So after many starts and stops, he finally does start his own religious order, which today we know as the Priests of the Sacred Heart. And I'm going to skip forward some more years. They become really well known for their good works. They start getting requests for priests to go into factories and to other countries. And the Pope issues what is called a decree of praise for the order. Pope Leo XIII, this should kind of raise a flag in people's heads because now we have Leo XIV. So Leo XIII issues this decree of praise, and Father Dehon goes to the Vatican to thank him personally. And Pope Leo is writing encyclicals about the problems with workers and industrial revolution, human dignity. His famous one is Rerum Novarum. He says to Father Dehon, preach my encyclicals, which Father Dehon then does for many years through writing, putting together conferences, speaking on the topic, and spreading the word. I like to say that Pope Leo put into writing what Father Dehon was doing already in the streets, really. It was a great partnership. But it was more than the two of them, because there was a third Leo at the time, Leo Harmel. He was a business industrialist. So he was on the forefront of it from the employer side. So you had these three Leos working together to try to figure out solutions for the challenges. The social question, they'd call it. This is one of many pictures we have of a conference where we aren't really sure which conference it is because he put on so many. Father Dehon is in the center, front row. Leo Harmel is next to him with a mustache. This to me looks like a conference that would have been at a seminary where they were trying to train priests for more pastoral type of work. Not to say his life was without challenge. This is his beloved St. John's School after World War I. It was bombed and mostly destroyed. Eventually it was rebuilt. He also had a lot of economic challenges because of the order's expansion. They started expanding to other countries pretty quickly. There were a lot of tensions in the society around them, also within the religious order itself. Even there was tensions with the French government, who at one point kicked out all the religious orders. And so he is basically exiled to Belgium. The latter part of his life, he's mostly a spiritual writer. He writes a lot about the Sacred Heart and retreats. And you see this picture of him here before a statue of the Sacred Heart. I believe that the way he really persisted was because he was so well grounded in this idea of the gift of God's love to each and every one of us. And he often spoke about the Sacred Heart as the love of the heart of Jesus. And he would pray before a statue of the Sacred Heart, and he would envision that love of God coming down and flowing out through that pierced heart to him. And he believed that when people really understood how much God loves them, your only reaction is to then share that love, to respond in love to God and to love your neighbor. and so to participate in that love. Now, he was a very well-loved man. This is his funeral procession. Hundreds attended it, and I pulled out just 3 quotes that kind of sum him up before we move on. In his spiritual testament to the religious order, so his priests and brothers, he said, "I leave you the greatest of all treasures, the heart of Jesus." And that really was the kernel of everything for him, this love of the heart of Jesus. Bishop Benet gave the homily at his funeral, and I liked this line, "Must one not be very great of heart to merit so much love?" And people, his students loved him, people really loved him because he cared about them. I also go around and I interview the SCJs and I say, describe your spirituality, because everyone tells it to me a little bit differently. But I like this, what someone said. He said, Father Dehon worked for the reign of the Sacred Heart in souls and societies. That was actually also the name of a magazine that he wrote. Societies where justice and love flourish and prevail. So, he did have a life of influence, not the way his dad thought, but probably more than his dad could even imagine. So there are over 2,200 religious brothers, priests, deacons with the SCJs around the world in over 40 countries. There are thousands of lay people that collaborate with them, like me, like anyone here. If you're volunteering at a parish or working with them, they're very active all around the world. So let's talk about their spirituality. This is Father John Chizinski, and I interviewed him. He was one of the first priests I interviewed, and he's sitting across from me in a chair, and I say, please describe, explain this to me. And he leans forward, and he just lights up with joy. And he's like, Monica, God is crazy about you. I'm like, oh. And he just went silent, so I could let that sit in for a little bit. I'm one of those type A people that I'm working all the time. I don't stop and really let that soak in, but think about that. God is crazy about every single one of us. And he's like, Father Dehon would want you to know that. So that's the very simple version of their spirituality. Their mission is to be prophets of love and servants of reconciliation. Very needed in today's world, right? Those are 2 things we could use a lot of. I love their cross. Franciscans have a cross, Benedictines have a cross, different orders. I love their cross, and I have a little card here that explains it. It has an open heart on it. Again, ask 5 SCJs. They're all going to say it a little bit differently. When I first met them, the person said to me, Monica, look for where Christ's heart is aching in this world, and then try to fill that ache with Christ's love. Like, oh, that's beautiful. So if you know the SCJs, Eucharist and adoration are very important to them. And I don't want to lose that in talking about all their outreach and ministry, because it's all grounded. In fact, one person said, SCJ spirituality is part inspiration and then perspiration. And I think that's a great way to kind of look at it. So when I talk to people outside of Mississippi, I tell them about you all, because you're one of the good stories. I stole these photos from either Facebook or your website, but you do tremendous outreach with the youth. Fabulous. The Dehon Village, amazing. But when I show other people, these are just screenshots from your website, the breadth of ministries you have, they're really inspired, because you only have a few priests, which means there are a whole lot of lay people out there working with them to make this all happen. And often I'll see these light bulbs go off where people are like, I wonder what more we could do. So I won't spend a lot of time on you, because you should know you, but you are a point of inspiration to other places. In the U.S., the SCJs also have Sacred Heart Seminary and School of Theology. I worked there for 5 years. That could be a whole nother talk, how a Catholic mom ends up on President's Council of a seminary. But it was fun, and I love this place. I think it's a very healthy Catholic seminary. It's national and international. So if you have, they do specialized formation. These are real people I've met. A 70-year-old deacon. He's been a deacon for 30 years. He's had all that formation. His wife passed away 2 years ago. In conversation with his bishop, he decides to become a priest. He goes back to seminary at 70, has to write a paper with, footnotes and the whole thing. But what he said to his bishop is, I will go to parishes that have no one to go there. So for the rest of my life, send me to wherever you need me, and I will bring the sacraments to them. He's never going to be a pastor, but he's going to bring the sacraments to a lot of people. We would get lawyers who have a lot of education, but absolutely no philosophy background. Okay, well, we catch them up, and then we get them through formation. We would have people who have a doctorate from some other country, but they don't have the English skills for their work. They might go through our English and Cultures program. They might also get a master's while they're there. So it's a pretty amazing place. This is one of the pictures of commencement. Father Vienne's in the middle. And you have a bunch of priests in the center, but all around them are just normal people who stepped up and said, I need more formation. And then they are directors of religious education, or one is a theology teacher in a high school. Some do chaplain type work in nursing homes. So each one of them is their own good story. And these are the people that actually run that seminary. There are a few priests in there, but they're mostly lay. And they're just salt of the earth Midwesterners who come, who do more than check a box. They will do anything to make sure that the future priests out serving people are really going to flourish in that ministry and be good priests. We have an apostolate out in South Dakota, Chamberlain, South Dakota, called St. Joseph's Indian School, and it serves the Lakota people. I use this photo just so you can get an idea of how big the ministry is. It's amazing. I went there 2 years ago. We've all heard the horror stories in the news about Catholic boarding schools, okay? Well, here's one that's not so much of a horror story. They actually pioneered the residential housing program. And I went and toured this, and they have all these small homes where the kids live with 2 people who act as house parents. They rotate the house parents. The house parents have support and counseling and everything they need to succeed. If a child is not doing well, there are other experts who can intervene. They are there with the permission of their family. For a lot of these kids, they may never have sat down and had an actual family meal until being in this type of setting. It goes all the way through grade school, and then they have a program for high schoolers to live on campus while they're going to a public high school. The SCJs also run some ministries on the reservation in Lower Brule. And it was eye-opening to me. I live in a nice house in a suburb in Wisconsin. To drive through the reservation and see the poverty and the drugs, the effect of drugs. And then we heard from the pastor and some people in the parish about the violence and the suicides. And it's heartbreaking. But this is where the SCJs go. They go where no one else will go. And they go to the people who are often overlooked and no one wants to go there. Just like Father Dehon went out to the streets. It's amazing, amazing work. Here's a happier view. This is a bunch of the school kids who, with Father Greg in the background. And at the beginning of a mass, they wore some of their traditional dress, and they had some drums, and some of the kids came in dancing for the beginning of mass. And you can see the joy and that the kids are thriving. It's really wonderful. Another ministry they have is down in Houston, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Houston. I've not been there yet. But again, I can be sitting at my desk at work, ho-hum, click on the SCJ newsletter, and you see a picture like this. This is not like my parish. This is a view of the feast on Our Lady of Guadalupe. Thousands of people come. I think that's cool. I want to go visit that one day. But when we worry about the church dying or our faith dying, no, it's still very vibrant in many, many places. Am I attached to anything? You all know Father Floribert, right? Do you know his backstory? I think I was at the Dehonian Associates group where you read this. I couldn't believe it. I had run into Father Floribert many times in the seminary. Always a great smile on his face. Here he is with one of the seniors. Incredibly kind, gentle person. And then I read about his backstory. And this is like one of those stories that I come across more than once with the SCJs. He says, in 2002, my uncle's family and I fled the ethnic war in Bunia in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo, without forgetting the dramatic and arduous 6-day walk on foot. Days and nights through the forest, risking encounters with dangerous wild animals and rebels. I will focus on the time we arrived at Mombasa. I'm like, what a paragraph that someone lived through all of that. And I had no idea. He'd never said any of this to me. He says, although we escaped, the suffering wasn't over. We had no place to stay, no food, no money to survive, not even clothes, except what we wore when we fled. They found some Dehonians. The Dehonians looked after the refugees. While some found housing and mattresses, others took care of food, clothing, and medicine. And when classes started, they purchased uniforms and paid the school fees for all the refugee children for 1 year. I was touched by this gesture and felt indebted. I learned what it means to weep with those who weep, to clothe the naked, to suffer with those who suffer. And he's quoting Matthew chapter 25 right there. To me, that is just breathtaking. And so many people would go through something like that and be irreparably broken or bitter or who knows what. It's hard for me to imagine. But he is this joyful gift of a person. I met another SCJ. I was sitting to dinner who saw his father shot in front of him, and he became a street orphan. One thing leads to another until he goes to an SCJ school. Now he's an SCJ priest ministering to street orphans. The provincial superior of the Priests of the Sacred Heart, Father Vienne, has a story about his experience on a boat coming over from Vietnam and then living in a refugee camp. And, again, you could be a bitter person, and instead he's actually spreading the gospel of good news all across the entire U.S. These are good stories. I have just a couple more. We can do it. I wanted to also give you a good story about a lay person, and this is Bill Lipscomb in the glasses over here on the far side of this. This was at a dinner to recognize lay people who had gone through our Masters of Theology program up in Wisconsin, and I specifically chose the goofy picture because there's a lot of joy. The people go through this program in small cohorts, and you're wrestling with your faith, and you're talking about a lot of really important things. They become very close and trusting with each other. Bill was a career prosecutor. He put people away into jail for years and years. And when he retired, he said, I want to learn more about my faith, and I want to do something to help people. So he comes back, he gets a master's in theology, and he starts working with a nonprofit group that helps people when they are released from jail with wraparound services. And he connected also Marquette into that so that people could get some form of education, hoping they don't fall back into their lives of crime. That's kind of amazing. And he did that all when he retired. He's not done. He just started with the SCJs doing an outreach in collaboration with some Franciscans in town to bring our English as a second language program to parents of school children in the Basilica School who need to learn English. Then I realized I haven't told you any good stories about women. Now, I'm mostly outnumbered by women all the time. I mean, by men all the time. But I'm like, there are good stories about women too. I have the back of someone's head here because she wanted to be anonymous. But when I was at the seminary, my phone rang one day and she started asking me about the Masters of Theology program. And she said, it looks like you educate a lot of women. I'm like, oh, we do, actually. Probably that program is 2/3 women for some reason. And she said, I want to support that. And I'm going to give you $100,000. I don't raise money, so I'm like, the SCJs have someone that raised money, I don't. I said, that's great. She wanted me to come over to her condo to meet her. So I go to the head of finance, and then we go to the SCJs, and we go, what do you want us to do? And they said, go meet her. So we did. We had the most lovely 1-hour discussion over tea and cookies. She was a volunteer in parishes for a lot of her life. And she said, I want women to be better formed, to contribute more within the church. And she handed us a check for $100,000, and we're talking. And then she goes, you know what? I'm going to pay for your opening retreat too. And she hands us another check for $25,000. She was, I think she was a teacher who unexpectedly inherited money and just wanted to give it all away. I am not here to raise money, so that's not why I told you the story. But the good part of that is because she gave us so much, what we did was we put that in the bank. We used the interest to give scholarships to put people through that Masters of Theology program. So one of the people who had a scholarship from our donor is this little lady in the front to the side with the gray hair. And that is Sister Janeth. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful person. She had a doctorate already from her home country, but she came to the U.S. to work with her religious order here in the U.S., south of Milwaukee, among the poor, and she felt like she really needed to improve her English to do her ministry better, but she wanted to do it in a seminary, right? Because a community college is not going to teach you how to say Eucharist or adoration or a lot of our other Catholic terms. She struggled. It was so hard for her, and she kept it up. And every time you passed her in the hallway, you felt blessed. I mean, so she's a good story, thanks to our donor who's a good story. Now, I'm not here to raise money, but I have 2 favors to ask of you. One is vocations. Praying for vocations is great. I would love for you to encourage vocations. When I was at the seminary, recruiting fell under my department, and a lot of what we found is people just think they can't. Oh, I never studied philosophy. Oh, I'm too old, I'm 30. Are you kidding? You know, so they never open themselves up to the possibility. I am convinced there are a lot of vocations out there that just go unanswered because people don't know how to take the next step, or they're worried about sounding foolish to a priest. And so actually we used to do a lot of Zoom calls where we'd let people just ask us questions. I'm not so scary. I'm not a priest. I'm not going to convince anyone that you have to join. And so often they would meet with me and a deacon, and then the deacon would accompany them along their journey. If you think you know someone who, I think there are a lot of people who are finding the secular world is not really what they thought it was going to be, and you have questions about how the vocations process works, you are welcome to call me, and I will help you encourage someone else. The real idea is for them to talk to Father Artie back there, who is going to be head of vocations. It's not only good for the religious order or the diocese, it's good for that person. People have to be aligned with what God is calling them to be. All right, and here's my second request. Tonight, if you can just 5 minutes of quiet, I want you to think about the fact that God is crazy about you. And if that just seems really hard or difficult, keep practicing until you can feel it in your heart, because God is crazy about every one of us, and it's pure gift. We don't earn it. It's just pure gift. And that is what Father Dehon would want you to know. So, questions? Anything else? Oh.
When people ask the question, make sure you repeat it so that it goes to Sister Rose's
Okay.
mic.
Yep, I will repeat questions. Any questions? Nothing?
How many taking care of the Dehonian Associates?
Great. Yes, thank you. I meant to ask that. Thank you. So you all taught me my job. Thank you.
How many people here want to
Great. Great. So for the sake of the recording, Laura just asked how many are Dehonian Associates and how many want to look into it. There is a flyer up here, and Father Jack said it would be showing up in all the bulletins. So, yeah. I think it's a great story and a great spirituality. That whole idea of being open, and open to where God is showing you the needs are, and responding to that with love. Nothing else?
I just want to say thank you very much. You've been very inspiring with this talk.
Well,
It should be, I think, offered to a parent. You might be surprised as to what you'll find here.
well, you can tell I love what I do, and I really appreciate the priests of the Sacred Heart. I'm an introvert, and so there's not much that could get me up here to talk. And I did have half a glass of wine first.
You did great.
Thank you. You look like you wanted to say something. No? Anyone else? Yes, in the back.
Well, I don't have a question, but just a comment that since I've been at Holy Spirit for about 13 years, and the priests, which are all SCJs, have just hit my heart so hard. And Father Ziggy, right?
Yes.
I miss him so much. Not that I don't love the priest here now, but he hit my heart pretty hard. And then just the congregation, just being a part of this has meant so much to me. So this season of my life, being a senior citizen and all, is just hard.
Thank you. So,
And it's because of
yeah.
the priest here at this meeting.
Thank you. For the sake of the recording, she was talking about how much the SCJs have touched her heart. And Father Ziggy, who actually I have a slide, and sometimes I talk about him because he's so pastoral. I mean, so pastoral. And he would walk up and down the staff part, the hallway of the seminary, and check in with every single one of us. Father Yvonne, I don't know if he ever worked down here. He was an older priest who would also always check in on the staff, and he had a walker. He's going along. And you know how a lot of people overlook people who get older? I'm 61, I'm getting there. And I'm in South Dakota, and I hear about this women's shelter that they have because there's so much violence against women out there. And someone goes, Father Yvonne started that. I'm like, what? And I go back to the seminary, and I said, Father Yvonne, did you start this women's shelter? Because he's so humble. They're all humble. They don't brag about themselves. They need me to come brag. And he's like, you know what? Women were getting hurt and they had to have some place to go. So we made it happen. Yeah, they're good. They're just, yeah. All right, I think I better turn off the microphone because I could talk all night. We good? All right, thank you.